Welcome back. Today, we're diving into something, well, it's a bit different.
Yeah.
We're doing a kind of forensic genetic investigation. We're looking at the lineage of San Fernando Valley OG SFV OG,
Well,
almost like it's a historical record.
and you have to treat it that way. It's essential because for a strain that everyone knows the name of, the real story gets, well, it gets muddy.
Right.
But when you look at the actual documented sources, this isn't just some myth. It's a detailed blueprint, and it all starts with one critical piece of material.
The origin point.
The origin point. The legendary Josh D. OG Kush 96 cut.
Okay, so let's unpack that. The chain of custody here is critical because the initial transfer, it's almost a Hall of Fame list.
It really is.
What anchors this whole story to the Valley. So it starts when Redline Reserve got seeds via Wonder Brett, popped that 96 cut.
Right?
They passed the cut to Mike. Mike then passed clones to Be Real.
And from Be Real.
The man himself. Be Real passes those genetics to Carlos Fuentes, who we know as LOS.
Right.
Later, original SFV OG.
I mean, that's a long journey for just one piece of a plant. But that's the moment when those genetics landed with LOS. That's the critical connection.
It puts the material in the place that gives it the name.
Exactly. Without those meticulous transfers, the whole lineage would be, just guesswork.
Absolutely. So our mission today is to track exactly how LOS took that foundational cut and just how much work went into stabilizing it.
Yeah, we're tracking the process that gets us to that one specific tightly controlled line, the SFV OG 2001, the original expression.
So this wasn't about finding something totally new.
No, not at all. It was about taking a masterpiece, that 96 cut, and refining it, locking in its best traits to make them reproducible.
Which brings us to that first phase, laying the groundwork, mostly before the year 2000. And Carlos Fuentes, LOS, he wasn't a novice, right?
No, he'd been growing since the late 80s. He came into this with a very specific intent.
And what was that?
It wasn't about scale. It was all about flavor, potency, and what the source material calls connoisseur quality. He was chasing taste and effect.
Which makes the next step so fascinating. Because the first big genetic jump, it wasn't really planned. It was kind of an accident.
It really was. They had some seeded OG Kush flower, and through just, accidental pollination, they ended up with an OG Kush bag seed male.
That's the irony, right? You've got the crown jewel female, the pure 96 cut.
Yeah.
And the father of the whole next generation comes from a happy accident, a random seed.
It really is.
But hold on, if you have that prize 96 cut, isn't using a bag seed male, which is, it's genetically random, right? A massive gamble.
That's a great question. It's a huge risk. But here's the thing. They needed a matching male to breed with the 96 cut.
Right.
And that bag seed male, crucially, came from the same OG Kush lineage. So while it was random, the genetics they were swimming in the same pool.
So a calculated risk.
A calculated risk. They were betting that the power of the OG Kush 96 female could stabilize the best parts of that male.
So in 1999, that's the cross. LOS takes that bag seed male and crosses it with the OG Kush 96 female.
And that establishes the F1 foundation.
F1 being the first generation.
Right. And you have to think of that F1 generation as like a huge genetic lottery. Every single seed is a totally unique mix of its parents.
You get a ton of variation.
A massive pool. Some are amazing, some are duds. The hard part is finding that 1 in 1,000 winner.
And that intense hunt leads us right into the next phase, the selection engine, from 2000 to 2001.
Yeah, this is where it gets obsessive.
In 2000, George Cifuentes, or Gnosis, he enters the picture full-time.
And Gnosis is the accelerator. The source calls him the behind-the-scenes selection engine. That says it all. He was the master curator.
And the work ethic was pretty incredible.
Oh, remarkable. We're talking 7 days a week commitment. It was just intensive, demanding labor.
What does that actually look like on the ground, 7 days a week doing what?
It's relentless filtering. You're popping hundreds, maybe thousands of seeds from that F1 generation. You have to clone them, veg them, bloom them.
Constantly watching them.
Constantly. You're defoliating, tracking their structure, their flower time, their resistance. And then, after all that, you have to test the final product.
For flavor and potency.
For flavor, for potency. It is a huge logistical undertaking, all just to isolate the few truly elite expressions.
So for 2 years, basically, 99 to 2001, they're running this constant genetic obstacle course, moving from F1s into F2s.
Exactly. And it paid off. That hunt yielded some very specific, really high-quality phenotypes.
The source names them, right?
Yeah, Silverback OG, Platinum OG, and Church OG. These were the winners of that genetic lottery.
And this is where the language is so important. Our source calls them working plants, not hype cuts. But what's the difference?
Well, a hype cut is, it's something that looks great on Instagram. It gets marketed right away, maybe after one grow.
Flashy?
Very. A working plant is an elite clone that's proven itself over multiple cycles. It's stable, it's predictable, it's reliable in the grow room. It passes the test every single time.
And they kept them in a tight circle.
A very tight circle. Because they represented the future of their line, not just some fleeting trend.
That control is so central to the next part, part 3, stabilization and the private era. They had the raw ingredients. Now they had to lock it all in.
And that stabilization process was just incredibly methodical. The sources stressed this wasn't a one-off cross.
It was repeated.
Repeatedly. They used one elite OG Kush 96 lineage male from that bag seed line and just kept crossing it with those elite females they found.
So by always going back to that same male, they were essentially back crossing.
Precisely, forcing uniformity.
They were trying to narrow all that genetic variance they opened up with the F1s.
Exactly right. The focus of the F2 and F3 work was just 3 things: uniformity, structure, and potency. They wanted every seed to produce a near-identical plant.
And by 2002, they'd done it?
But in 2002, yeah, the line was considered stabilized and, importantly, indica dominant.
What did that mean in practice?
Predictable structure, shorter, denser plants, and for the user, a heavy, body-focused, and highly reliable effect.
And that specific stabilized version gets its official name, the SFV OG 2001 cut.
That's the historical marker. The year signals that the stabilization was confirmed.
It's the anchor point.
It is. And after that, we go into the private era from 2002 all the way to 2009.
And that era is all about restriction. The strain was only gifted within their inner circle, sold very quietly.
Right.
No public release at all.
None. And that was a protective measure. It ensured the origins of that 2001 cut remained verifiable, tied only to the work they did.
But that tight control, that's what sets the stage for the big split, the divergence.
It really does.
Yeah.
Because while they were keeping it private, the name was about to go public in a very different way.
Right. Part 4, the divergence. This is where the story gets really complicated for anyone who's bought SFV OG in the last, decade.
It does, because in the mid-2000s, the Cali Connection, started by Swerve, releases their own version, and they label it SFV OG Kush.
And we have to be so clear here. The genetics are completely different.
Fundamentally different.
Cali Connection used a Valley-style OG, but they crossed it with an Afghani #1 from homegrown Fantaseeds.
So different mother, different father.
But the same name on the bag.
That's the critical distinction. You have the original tied directly to the 96 cut versus a completely separate cross.
So as a user, how would I even know the difference? What was it like?
Oh, it was night and day. It starts with the smell, the terpenes. The Swerve version, the SFV OG Kush, was heavy on lemon citrus and that sharp pine. People called it a pine sol note.
Okay.
And because of that Afghani background, it had a much more sativa influence.
And how did that show up in the plant, in the effect?
Well, the original 2001 cut was heavy, short, dense, that classic couch luck indica effect. The Swerve version was lankier, sometimes easier to grow, and the effect was more heady, more energetic, a cerebral sativa high.
So 2 totally different experiences under the same 3 letters.
Exactly. And that's the version that went global. From 2009 to 2013, Swerve took their SFV OG Kush international.
It just became the standard.
It did. It's a powerful lesson, really. While the original creators were focused on private genetic integrity, the competing version was defining the public narrative just by being available.
It shows how fast a name can get detached from its original genetic.
It certainly does, but we have to acknowledge the sheer scale of the original work. SFV OG 2001 was the foundation, but it was just one piece of a much larger project.
Right, the rest of the roster. Part 5, Legacy Reclaimed.
Between 2003 and 2008, it was a true dynasty. We're talking LOS OG F4, King Kush, Key Lime OG, Presidential OG, Holy Grail OG, King Fire OG. I mean, the list goes on.
So the 2001 cut was the mother lode for an entire family of genetics.
It really was.
So after all this intense work and then years of watching the name they created just take on a life of its own, the story comes full circle.
It does. The source says Carlos and George reconnected in 2018.
And that was pivotal.
It was. It led directly to the creation of Flame Wars.
Which was built specifically around those original family genetics.
Right. And importantly, they went public in 2021. This was the moment. The original creators returning to the market to define their lineage on their own terms.
It feels less like a business move and more like setting the historical record straight.
That's a good way to put it.
So what does this whole journey, the accidental mails, the 7-day work weeks, the global split, the return, what does it mean for you, the listener?
Well, the core lesson is that the name SFV OG is a classic case of genetic history getting tangled up with commerce.
Mm-hmm.
You now know there are two completely distinct genetic families sharing that name. If you've had SFV OG in the last decade, you most likely had the lemon citrus sativa-leaning SFV OG Kush from Swerve.
And the return of LOS and Gnosis with flavors is about offering access to that original.
To the tightly controlled, heavier, indica-dominant SFV OG 2001 cut, the direct descendant of that original Josh DOG Kush 96.
It really makes you realize that sometimes the most important history is hidden away, and a simple name can be the biggest point of confusion.
It really does, and it leaves you with a final thought to mull over.
Yeah. When a genetic line is so carefully built and protected for years in private, how hard is it to truly reclaim that identity after a different version has already gone global? What does the return of LOS and Gnosis tell us about the real value of a defined, verifiable genetic history in a market that's, pretty much unregulated?